Shane, we are live. First day of the legal tampering period. It has been a whirlwind of the last 7 hours. There has been signings coming in left and right, and we are here to give our immediate thoughts. If you're in our Discord, you've already gotten some initial thoughts on some of these players, but we're here to talk through actual trades, but also actual strategy. Not just, hey, is that a good landing spot or is that not a good landing spot? Like actually some things that you're thinking about doing once you have time to sit down, go propose some deals, go look at some pivots, go look at some cash outs, some liquidation, some tier downs, tier ups, everything we can think of. We're going to talk about that over the next hour. We're going to hit some hammers as well, but this is mostly just going to be some actionable items for free agency. So Shane, how have you been today? I know you had to actually work, so it has been a little frustrating for you being able to like get breaking news on everything, but how's your day been so far? You and I haven't talked much today. I've been in the Discord. You've been in the Discord, but how you doing?
I should have taken today off. That's what I just kept saying that to myself literally all day. I was like, why didn't I take today off? Like, this is just brutal. I'm like, oh, maybe it won't be that much going on. I don't know what I was thinking. It's been a terrible day. Eagles signed Saquon. We'll talk about that later. I'm sure they signed Bryce Huff. We're not going to talk about that later. I thought Bryce Huff was Josh Huff, but those are two different people. For a while there, I was under the impression that the Eagles signed Xavier McKinney because someone put that in our chat, and I kept refreshing the article feed on Comcast Sportsnet Philadelphia because I wanted to read that article. And after about an hour and a half, I realized it's not happening. So I checked Twitter and saw that he was actually signing with someone else. So there you go.
Yeah, there's been a lot. So we're going to start at the top and just kind of go from top to bottom, maybe not from relevance to non-relevance, but we're going to start at the very top and we'll make it easy because there's really only been one huge deal signed at quarterback other than Russell Wilson. I guess we can touch on that as well. But before we start on Kirk Cousins, do you have any thoughts on Russell Wilson to Pittsburgh? We talked about that on the morning drive today because there wasn't much else to talk about. If you're not familiar with the morning drive, we have a show every Monday in the Discord that we do while Shane is driving to work. So usually you get some football and some Dynasty, but also Shane cussing at other drivers on the road.
Not as much as you would think, though. Not as much as you would think.
Every once in a while, we'll be talking about a trade or a player, and then it's just, what are you doing? You know, it's just Shane yelling at another driver. So you do get that nuance in the show. But thoughts for the people on Russell Wilson, anything you're doing that makes it change your strategy or any moves you're making around Russell Wilson signing with the Steelers?
I mean, will someone give me the 114 for Russell Wilson? Can I now get 2 seconds for Russell Wilson? That's probably what I'm looking to do. I think it's an upgrade for Pickens, obviously, compared to Pickett. I think it's an upgrade for Deontay Johnson as long as he's there. But we did talk about, someone brought it up in the chat that Russell Wilson threw to the middle of the field something like 6% of the time last year, which isn't great. But, and you brought it up, a bunch of dump offs to the running backs. He was good for that. So Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren should have excellent seasons. I don't know that Russell Wilson is anything. I think last year was about as good as we can expect. And even though he went 26-8, he still had some very not good scoring weeks for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks probably very similar to what he did in Denver from a fantasy production standpoint. He's probably just a replaceable QB.
Right.
I think the biggest impact is not necessarily for Pickens. I mean, sure, you can argue it's good for Pickens. We like Pickens. I like Pickens a lot. But I don't look at this and go, okay, it's a sheer upgrade for Pickens. It's an upgrade.
Right.
He's getting a better quarterback than he had before. But I think the biggest upgrade is, Russell Wilson led the league last year in target percentage to running backs. And it wasn't like he had great receiving running backs, right? Like it was Jaleel McLaughlin, Samaje Perine. Go look at Samaje Perine's numbers last year and tell me Jaylen Warren can't get 70 receptions this year. So we talked about it this morning. Like we are both in, at least I am, I'm in on Jaylen Warren as top 15 running back. But again, for me, if I have Jaylen Warren, I need to have him on a team where I know I can start him every week.
Right.
I'm going to live with the fact he's going to average probably 12 points a game for the season, but he's going to give me 4 or 5 games where he's 20 plus. It's just that's the nature of what it's going to be. So if I have him in the right position, I'm actually very high on Jaylen Warren and Najee to a degree because he's going to be out on the field. And you look at some of the first and second down targets to running backs last year. That's how Samaje Perine got some of his.
Yep.
Javonte got some of his. So I think it's good for the running backs. Receivers, I think it's just neutral. But to your point, Russell Wilson himself, do you think there's any sort of competition here at all? Like all?
No. I think, and I don't think a ton of Russell Wilson, but I think even less of Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett has shown to be an absolute albatross on an offense. I used the word albatross today, so that's cool. Definitely an albatross on the offense. He's not. Look, they went out and signed, I know it's very cheap, Russell Wilson. You don't do that if you have any confidence in your quarterback.
Yeah, so I'm agreeing with you with being able to sell Russell Wilson. I'm not as interested in him. He is going to be a starter, but I think he lives in that replaceable level starter range if he's your QB3. I'm actually probably comfortable pivoting down to a QB that doesn't have a job.
Right.
Just because I think if I ever have to start Russell Wilson, I'm probably just as good off starting whatever flavor of the week backup is getting a start that week, which we know there's going to be plenty of them throughout the year. I don't think the fantasy difference between Russell Wilson and whatever backup quarterback goes in a certain week is that big of a difference, but he's going to get some of the inflated value because he is a locked-in starter whenever it's seen that he's going to be the locked-in starter for the Steelers, which we both say will come sooner rather than later. So we'll move on. Let's go to Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. This has probably been one of the most discussed topics today, not just for Kirk Cousins. He got a 4-year, $180 million deal, which is basically a 2-year contract guaranteed for both years. And then there's option years on there, essentially a 3rd year, like roster bonus or roster option. But effectively, he got 2 fully guaranteed years, Shane. Like he is going to be Atlanta's QB for 2 years, like it or not. This has to elevate all of the weapons on Atlanta. So talk about it. Kirk Cousins, you've always liked Kirk Cousins. I'll give my thoughts quickly, but where are you at now on Cousins now that he has a seemingly Cousins landed on his feet, man. He has just as good a weapons as he had in Minnesota. And
I mean, he might not have the singular weapon of Justin Jefferson, obviously not, but the cumulative, hopefully I used that word correct. Yes. The aggregate, probably should have stopped while I was ahead. The weapons that he has in Atlanta are very good. Drake London, whether you think higher of Kyle Pitts than I do, and this is great for Kyle Pitts for what it's worth, obviously. He's got a lot of weapons at his disposal there, and Bijan is a pass catching back. And this gives them also the option to do whatever they want in the draft. They could go crazy and go, you know what? Let's add another wide receiver to this room. Why not? So I do love this, especially for Drake London. Kirk Cousins is still going to be what he's always been, right? Top 10 quarterback. He's going to give you some spike weeks, but he's going to be a top 10 quarterback that's not respected.
Kirk Cousins or Deshaun Watson?
Kirk Cousins.
Okay. Would that have changed, or would that have been different if I would ask you that yesterday?
I don't think so. I mean, because at worst, Cousins was going back to Minnesota, and he'd still have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. I don't think anywhere else was in play.
Does the Achilles injury on a plant leg worry you at all?
It would, but it sounds like he's going to be ready for week 1. So I'd be more worried 17 years ago when surgery was what it was back then. But it sounds like he's going to be ready for week 1. And if he's not, he misses 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I still get him for another 14, 15 weeks of the season. I can live with it.
One more, Kirk Cousins or Baker Mayfield? Now that they have basically equivalent contracts, Cousins probably has better weapons, but Baker's younger, probably has another career after this, whereas this is probably Cousins' last big gig, you know what I mean? In terms of, like, he is what he is at this point. He's probably, I don't want to say finishing his career in Atlanta, but if he plays out at least 3 years here, he's going to be 38, 39. You know,
Kirk
it's hard
Cousins,
to play past that.
Still Kirk Cousins because of the upside. I still think he has more upside over the next 2 years than Baker does. After that, if Baker's still playing and Kirk Cousins isn't, am I going to really care that Baker's still out there giving me QB2 numbers? No, because I can probably find that on the market. Hey,
and last one.
Well, real quick. Oh, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, we'll go. What were you going to say?
No, it was completely not. It was not germane to the conversation. Go ahead.
I thought, okay, maybe Shane's going to go to another player, but if it was something totally different. All right, last one, because these guys are all back to back on keep trade cut. Bryce Young or Kirk Cousins?
Bryce Young.
But is that just is that as simply I have more flexibility with Bryce Young or more upside for flexibility?
That's probably just simply take lock at this point, to be quite honest with you.
Okay. So
Know
let's
your
talk about the
biases.
impact for the other players. Assuming Kirk Cousins is healthy, how high do you push Drake London? Ray did a thread kind of articulating Drake London, not versus Justin Jefferson, but kind of pointing out, could we see like this is a lofty comparison, but could we see a DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams type rise for Drake London to where we're looking at him in a year as a locked in top 8 receiver in the league, top 6 receiver? Can he get that high?
I would not be surprised if that's the case. Remember, I know his first year was fine. It's last year really that's like, oh, he didn't take a step forward. You know what I mean? But coming out, we had really high hopes for Drake London. Like, that dude was an excellent collegiate prospect. We thought he was going to be a stud. He was fine in his rookie season, even though the scoring wasn't as high as we would have liked. His target share was insane. Last year, he didn't take a step forward. His quarterback play last year was beyond atrocious, though. If you watched any Atlanta games, it was just horrid, absolutely horrid. So, yeah, I could see him taking a step. Now, would I be willing to pay for that right now? Not a chance in the world. Absolutely no chance. If you didn't already have Drake London before today, sucks to be you, and I don't think I'm going to pay up for what I think people are going to want for him. So,
well, let's take the conversation there, because we could have said, "Oh, what are you paying?" or "What are you doing with Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson?" But I think they kind of are what they are. Yeah, that range of QB really doesn't elicit a lot of dynasty strategy. You know, if you really want to go buy a Kirk Cousins share and you have to pay 112, 110, whatever, like you could. Same with the Russell Wilson, but I don't think there's really a sell high or. Someone did mention in the chat, would you be willing to pivot off of one of the bigger name QBs for, here was one, I think, Justin Herbert or Kirk Cousins and the 106? Would you be willing to hedge against that Justin Herbert share? Clearly, they're buried in Will Dissly and Gus Edwards. You know what they're trying to do, Shane. It is pound it. Would you give up Justin Herbert, the security for the 106 in Cousins, knowing 106 you could get Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, Drake May, Jaden Daniels? I mean, we know how you value those picks. Would you be willing to move off the insulation of that? And would it change if Herbert was your QB1 or your QB2? I think that, for me, that's where I've had a couple teams where I have Josh Allen, and I was looking today going, man, I got Herbert, I got Kyler Murray. Like, if I can get the haul, I might be willing to do it. If I can get the deal I want, not necessarily the players, but the type of deal I want, which includes picks, receivers, young players, flexibility, right? Would you do it? Where are you at?
If he's my QB2, sure, I'll do it.
You have Jalen Hurts and Herbert. It's a start 11, and you're trying to sit here and think, man, what can I get with that 106? So it's Kirk Cousins and Malik Neighbors for Justin Herbert. You doing that?
I could be tempted into doing that in a start 11. I gotta have a line of demarcation. So I'll just set it here. Start 10, I'm going to hold on to Justin Herbert. We start getting in the start 11 territory, I'll think about moving him for Kirk Cousins and the 106. And there's probably a really good chance as the draft gets closer and closer that think about will turn into, yeah, I'll do it.
All right, so 2 questions now on Drake London, and then we'll get to the one everybody wants to talk about, which is Kyle Pitts. So Drake London. Stop me when I hit a receiver that you would not give up for Drake London in Dynasty, okay?
Okay.
DJ Moore. Jordan Addison. Nope. Stop me. So if you say nothing,
okay, gotcha.
We just silence means Shane is taking Drake London. Let's see. DJ Moore, Jordan Addison, Michael Pittman, Devontae Smith, Nico Collins, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave. So still Olave over London.
Yeah.
Okay. Malik Neighbors or Drake London. Not the choice, but you have to draft Malik Neighbors with the picks.
Yeah, I get
Call it the 106, and he's the guy that's there. London or Neighbors?
I'll go London right now. I'll go London. I have some certainty. I have some certainty where he is, right? He's going to be in Atlanta unless something completely unforeseen happens, like him and Kirk Cousins get into a fist fight and he has to get set away. But assuming that doesn't happen, I'm going to take the certainty of knowing where London is. There is always the chance that Neighbors gets drafted into one of these teams where we're like, oh, that's not great for his fantasy outlook.
Last one, Garrett Wilson.
Wilson.
Okay. So London basically for you has jumped into the top 12.
Right.
He's ahead of Waddle. He's ahead of Ayuk, but he's in that range with Neighbors, Olave. I assume you're going Puka and A.J. Brown over Drake London.
Yes.
Okay. So Shane's got him as a top 12 receiver, moved up a couple spots. And the line of demarcation is probably the 105, 106 is a reasonable pick you would pay. Maybe depending on your needs.
Yeah, 105. I feel like 106. I'll just hold on to London, but I'll probably move him for that pick. I don't know who I'm kidding. So yeah, 105, 106.
Okay. All right, let's get into Kyle Pitts. Someone asked earlier, is he a top 4 tight end in Dynasty? And I'm looking right now before today. So before they got Kirk Cousins, I don't know if it changes a ton for Kyle Pitts. I think people kind of already anticipated they would get Kirk Cousins, either are like a rookie or Kirk Cousins. So I don't know if this is like, oh my gosh, we went from a nothing to Kirk Cousins elevates every Falcon. I do think it was kind of built in a little bit that they were going to get a better quarterback. But right now, Kyle Pitts is tight end 7. I think you would easily, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you would easily take Kyle Pitts right now over Mark Andrews and TJ Hawkinson.
Well, TJ Hawkinson, because he can't walk. And I'm big on tight ends that can walk. Which
asset would you prefer today on March 11th, Shane? Mark Andrews or Kyle Pitts?
Mark Andrews. But
okay, if I want to hear the butt on this.
If I could move Mark Andrews for Kyle Pitts in anything, I probably would think hard about it. And like you said, we knew Kyle Pitts was going to get an upgraded quarterback, right? Because it was almost near impossible unless they brought back the ghost of Tommy Maddox for him to get worse quarterback play. Like that, and even with London, and that's, I didn't move London up an incredible amount. I moved him up a bit. We knew they were going to get improved quarterback play. Like you said, that's kind of baked into the thought process on them anyway.
All right, so 12 teams start 11. We'll go 2 PPR to where people are excited about tight ends, any tight end, but people are more excited about even some of the tight ends that are tight end 12, 15, 18 even. What are you doing with Kyle Pitts if you have him there? Because it sounds to me, just there's a little bit in your voice that you don't believe the Kyle Pitts production is coming just because he has Kirk Cousins. So if you had him, let's say you were managing to get the 212 and Kyle Pitts for Mark Andrews, and now you have Kyle Pitts and you're going, all right, what can I get for Kyle Pitts? Because everyone thinks he's a top 3 tight end in Dynasty again now because he has Kirk Cousins. A league where you care about tight end, like you're looking for some production, but the array of tight ends that you're willing to trade for is deeper because it's 2 PPR. What are you trying to do with Pitts there? Like, what would a trade you're sending out for Pitts look like? Where you're giving away Pitts, what are you trying to get back?
You think there's enough hype that I could trade Pitts away for a first and Evan Ingram?
I think in a lot of formats, I think people would they wouldn't necessarily say that's an egregious starting offer. I do think Evan Ingram, David Njoku, Jake Ferguson, what I found is those are usually already on rosters that are playing tight end a certain way. Like a lot of my Evan Ingram teams, I've just had Evan Ingram and he's kind of just parked there because I know he's better for me than what he would be on the trade market. So I don't think you have a lot of rogue Evan Ingram managers or David Njoku managers that are like, oh man, I really would love to add a first to him to get a stud.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm taking all the risk because I'm paying for Kyle Pitts. I'll do that I would consider that for Sam Laporta, but Kyle Pitts.
I mean, so
it feels like those are the bad targets. I want to ask you this. How much risk are you willing to take? Would you do Michael Mayer in a first for Kyle Pitts?
Yes.
Okay. Cole Kmet in a first for Kyle Pitts.
Yes. Cole Kmet. I won't even get into it. I don't feel like
Dalton Schultz in a first for
attack
Kyle
me
Pitts.
Again. Probably Pitts. Yeah. Good chance that's Pitts.
Interesting. Even with Schultz going back to Houston.
Yeah.
Don't
care. He's the third option in that offense. And if they add anyone at all, which will not only crush the wide receivers a little bit, will absolutely eviscerate Dalton Schultz. There's only so many targets to go around.
All right. I guess last one, you're probably turning this one down too. Dallas Goedert or Kyle Pitts? With Kyle Pitts. First on top of Goddard. Yeah, these are all leverage deals where you're trying to exploit the fact that you can still stay within the threshold of a 2 PPR with getting a tight end back. but you're just tacking on the first. And it does, I didn't even, you notice I didn't say 108 and Dallas Goedert. I just said a first, meaning if someone sends you a 25 first that you're like, that's probably a mid to late first. The point is you get the liquidity of a first, right? We know how powerful that can be in certain leagues that are active. Someone will trade for a future first if you know when to move it away.
No, I get you. Trust me, 100%. I get you. I think I'm still going to take the first in Goddard, but again, that's my disbelief more in Pitts. So I wouldn't fault someone if they completely think I'm wrong. They go, he had a really great rookie season, 1,000 receiving yards. Real quick, there was a reason I brought up Flowosaurus's comment. Kmet finished tight end 7 and 8 with Fields and gets Caleb. Don't say he sucks. I actually wasn't going to say Kmet sucks. Actually, I cut myself off from saying anything about Pitts because I don't feel like getting death threats to my family this week. I want to have a quiet start to the week.
I'll just say this, and maybe this is it's not a hot take, but one of the reasons why Kmet has produced so much for fantasy, go look at his snap count the last 2 years compared to every other tight end in the league. He's literally played 400 more snaps than every tight end. Jeez. Now, to his credit, he's played 400 more snaps than every tight end. It's hard to play a lot of snaps at tight end. You know how many of them get hurt every game?
Yeah.
You know, like he's out there a lot, which is, it's like a running back that carries a lot of touches, you know, a high workload. Some people will say, oh, he was just given that. I think there's probably an element of there's skill. There is skill. Whether you believe it or not, there is skill to be able to stay on the field for 92% of the snaps in an NFL game. Definitely. So I think there's probably justification to say that until the Bears say we're not going to try to do that, that Kmet's going to be up there in terms of top 3 in the league in usage, just being on the field. And that's what makes kind of his other numbers that people look at, his targets per route run, that kind of stuff doesn't look as good, right? Because he's just out there more than others. But production-wise, he's been very productive. I'll just say this with Pitts. I've wanted to get Pitts. I've said it all year about Pitts. We did the video on Pitts a couple weeks ago. I've wanted Pitts for this reason. I think there's a world where he does have the fantasy ceiling that you basically have wanted from the get-go, just because a lot of his underlying metrics are very good. But it's hard to bet that he's going to go from being a 900,000-yard receiver to just an elite tight end. He's Travis Kelce. You know, that's in his range of outcomes, but it's also one that I'm willing to bet against, especially in a 2 PPR. If I can get one of these deals where I'm Goddard, Schultz, I'm taking any of those guys in a first. Because you know what, Shane, in a 2 PPR, what can I do? Start those guys.
Yeah.
It ain't great, but I can start Dalton Schultz or Dallas Goedert in a 2 PPR. They'll give me 13 to 15 points per game. So I'm willing to do that if I get the leverage of the pick. So let's move on.
Couple things. I completely forgot what I was going to say. While you're on there, though, hey, hit like on wherever you're watching us. If that's on the Twitter,
got 2,000 in here.
YouTube, go ahead and hit the likes and share, and we appreciate everybody jumping on with us.
Hell yeah.
And I'll say this. If last week showed me anything, it's that the community, there's a very large portion of the community that was already in on Pitts. And they are going to be even more so now that he did get a significant quarterback upgrade.
100%. All right, let's move on. The biggest running back signing of the day. Well, it's probably a co-biggest running back signing of the day, but because you are an Eagles fan,
Singletary,
we will go to, well,
Gus
for
Edwards?
you, yes, that's up there. We'll go to the biggest one in your world, Eagles signing Saquon Barkley. Got a pretty decent deal. I think it was, $46 million, and then he got 26 guaranteed or something. So just shy of like 12 million AAV.
Yeah.
Highest guaranteed money. I think it was like the 3rd highest running back contract in terms of guarantees, like ever, or close to it. I don't know if that's exactly right, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. What are you thinking here? My initial reactions were, I'll tell you what, Shane, I love the fit from like a scheme standpoint. I don't love the fit for, and I'll just say it, whether Saquon is healthy or not, I do not think he has the 20+ point per game ceiling in him anymore. Not in Philly. Not in Philly. He will not get the way they run their offense, the 2-minute drill. Like, I'm hoping that he plays 95% of the snaps, and every time it's 3rd and long, they don't put Kenneth Gainwell in there. But I have a feeling they didn't put Barkley in this role to play him 95% of the snaps. So it's going to be 2-minute drill, and you're going to go Kenneth Gainwell just got a carry and 2 targets. And Jalen Hurts only targeted the running back 4 times all day. Doesn't feel like he has the ceiling. Do you agree as an Eagles fan from fantasy standpoint? I know you're probably happy about it from an NFL standpoint, but fantasy outlook, what do you think?
I'm with you. We talked about this again on the morning drive. Shout out to our patron. Go join it. I don't know what it is, but join it. Find it. Just Google
It's
it.
on the screen, Shane. Look above my head.
Oh, patron.com all gas and sign up for Dynasty Trades at 5. There you go.
If only we had it on the screen while we were streaming.
Yeah, I don't think so. We talked about it. I don't think Saquon has that ability anymore. And I don't think he's going to see the amount of work that he would need to hit that high. The Eagles, you talked about it a little bit there. They last year started well for Swift. It started well, but then they just kind of completely moved away from him. Now, obviously, there's a new offensive coordinator there, so the offensive scheme is going to be different. I don't think Saquon, from a physical standpoint, can still be an elite running back. I think he can give you weeks where he gets, Swift had 30 carries one game. Will there be weeks that Saquon gets 25 opportunities? I think so. I don't think it'll be often because I think any offense that has A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert, you kind of want to feature them as much as you can. I don't know how much receiving work Saquon's going to get either because Swift is an excellent receiver and Jalen didn't really look his way a lot. But I guess we'll find out. Was that a Jalen thing or was that just the offensive scheme? Jalen was running for his life a lot last year, and it seems to me that he would have just taken any outlet that came to him if given the choice, but I could be wrong.
So Saquon in Dynasty, I think people are going to like this landing spot. He got a contract that makes you feel really good about him landing there, and I think it's seen as a very good landing spot. Auto sell for any first, Shane?
Yes.
Interesting. I actually think you can get that done.
Oh, I know.
You're willing to say, I'm going to take any first in 2025, definitely any first in 2026. I think you can get that done. And the way you and I are, listen, a lot of people have been holding Saquon and holding some of these running backs, waiting for them to sign. They were excited for today, right? They wanted the honeypot landing spots, Philly, Houston, Dallas, whatever those are, right? They got one. But I think a lot of people, this is just a shout out to everybody in here that's watching, almost 2,000 people in here joining us live, which is awesome. We see the landing spot. It happens. You go to your sleeper league, especially, you'll see how many people have put Saquon on the block. Man, just click that trade block button, right? He's on the block, Shane. But then when you try to get him, it's, I need at least a first. And can you kick in that Devin Singletary? Can you kick in that other guy that's also going to help me? Like, don't try to leverage trade him, right? Just take the first.
Yeah, that's the
Especially if your roster is already built in a way where you're looking at it, you're not a Saquon Barkley away from either contending or not. And that's our bet. We both just said we don't think he's got 20 point per game potential. Historically, that means pretty low WAR. He's going to be better than the average running back, but not a difference maker to where you go, I can't make this up with my non-tight end advantage or my non-quarterback advantage. So don't get greedy. Don't go, I got to sell high on Philly. I got to get at least a first and a second. Because that's not how Dynasty players think today. You can try it, but don't be shocked when who right now is seeing overreactions in their league where people are buying high on the guys that just signed today? It's not happening. So I'm taking this window. Let me see how many Saquon shares I have. I have a decent amount of Saquon, more than I should have of a running back. 6 Saquon Barkleys. So it's like, geez, 15% Saquon, something like that for me. Like 40 out of 39, 40 leagues, six Saquons. Like that's more than I'm comfortable with. I'm willing to take a first in 3 or 4 of those leagues and just walk away. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, but that's, I think that's an edge because a lot of people think they can get more.
You got an out on a soon-to-be 27-year-old running back with a history of lower body injuries. And yes, I know I said this about CMC 2 years ago. I don't think he was 27. Barkley is not as talented from a football perspective as CMC. We thought he was coming out of college, and maybe he got sapped to that with all the injuries. Whatever the case is, he's never been as good as CMC has been in the NFL for whatever reason. Don't get mad at me. I actually have him in 4 leagues, 13%. And he is anyone's watching from those leagues, please send an offer any first in 2025, and he is yours.
So what's the line in 2024? We got a question. 201 Saquon. Ryan Foley, I'll put this up there, said Miles Sanders are putting up top 12 numbers. I don't think either of us said he can't be top 12. I actually think what I said is top 12 just doesn't matter that much, right? I can replace that with Jaylen Warren.
Right.
I can replace that with a veteran, James Conner. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have the insulation, but I'm not impressed by a running back getting even top 6 numbers. Doesn't move the needle with the way we value running backs. So what's the line this year? Then we'll move on to another big running back signing. This year's picks, what would be the lowest you would take? Would you take a 112, 111?
No.
Okay, what's the line this year then?
Where can I get Brian Thomas Jr.?
Probably 109, 110, 109. Yeah.
109. 109 is as low as I'm going then. I think if someone actually offers me the 110, you know what? No, I'm going to 109. That's as far as I'm willing to go. And if you're not willing to do that, then let's talk about your 25 picks. I'm not going to settle just to trade them. We'll try your 25 picks if you're not willing to go higher than the 109 or the 109, I should say.
All right. So next up, we have Josh Jacobs, who actually got a little more money than Saquon, but less AAV. And then this weird deal where, I don't know if you saw the original tweet, but they said only 12.5 million guaranteed, and then it was deleted by Tom Pelissero. And
still 12.5 on Spotrac.
And then it comes back up that it really was 12.5, that the Packers don't guarantee any money past the first year. So Jacobs took a 4-year, $48 million deal, 12.5 guaranteed at signing, 15.3 million, I believe he's guaranteed to make this year. But effectively, a 1-year commitment.
Yeah.
Not the guaranteed money. He got less guaranteed money than DeAndre Swift. So if guaranteed money was all that mattered, he didn't get what I think he was expecting. He didn't get what Saquon got, but he's getting $15 million this year, which is like 20% more than he would have gotten on the tag.
Right.
And we were talking to him in the Discord, like, all he needs to do is survive to next year. And if he gets next year's salary, he's going to make more money. You know what I mean? Like, he's got the highest AAV. He just needs to get through season by season, but not a long commitment here from the Packers. But they cut Aaron Jones. We'll talk about him in a minute. What's your thoughts on Jacobs to the Packers? They've cleared the backfield for him, Shane. Is it wheels up?
AJ Dillon's gone too, right?
Everybody's gone. They have Emmanuel Wilson as their other running back.
Well, I was going to say what happened to Patrick Wilson, but now I think it's actually Emmanuel.
I believe
Wilson.
Patrick Taylor is a free agent as well.
That guy,
So
him.
Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon are gone. Josh Jacobs is there. I mean, feels like they brought him in and gave him a 1-year guarantee.
Yeah, they're going to.
Feels like it's run
him into the ground,
him, right?
Yeah, like why? I would expect him to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 opportunities. Hopefully a lot of that is targets, and maybe he even scores his first receiving touchdown this year. That would be awesome. But that dude's going to get a ton of work.
Jacobs easily over Saquon short term.
I bet you I could get Jacobs plus for Saquon.
What would you expect back, or would you do it straight up if that's the line? But what would you offer that you think the other person would take? I don't want to get too aggressive, but what would be like the deal you would send? Would you take Jacobs in a second for Saquon in a third?
Yeah, that was literally the deal I was thinking of in my head. I would do that.
We share a dynasty brain a lot. Yeah, so that's good. You were thinking that, but you would take that, send it out, and probably feel just as good about that RB spot you're plugging Jacobs in that you were plugging Saquon in, right?
And and I'm not giving up Jacobs, or I'm not giving up Barkley straight up for Jacobs, because again, I think Barkley's market's going to be better than that. Just from the comments that I've seen today in our chat, even, and we have pretty cynical, skeptical fan base that we deal with, and a lot of those guys are super excited about Saquon and the Phillies. I just think his resale value should be higher than that.
Let's talk a little strategy here. Let's say you have Saquon and Josh Jacobs, and you have one of these kind of peripheral guys that you need to know when to start. Jaylen Warren, Tajae Spears. We'll talk about Spears here in a second. But you kind of have a roster construction where now you feel like you're overvalued or overinflated at running back. How do you play Jacobs versus Saquon? Would you shop either one, kind of just cash out on the one that you could cash out on and just start the other one, or send out different trades? Would you kind of effectively treat them similar on the market, though, for what we just talked about?
Yeah, again, I think I could get more for Barkley, so that's probably the one I'm looking to move. But I'd put them both on the market and see what the offers are that come for him. I'm not opposed to trading them both, to be quite frank. If I can get a first and another running back thrown in, my favorite guy, maybe can I get a first and Devin Singletary thrown in for Josh Jacobs in a third, something like that. You know what I mean? He'd go.
We had a quick trade on this here. Josh Jacobs are 25 first or Achane in a second. Are you willing to go to that Achane range and tier down for one of these veterans that just signed today, Barkley or Jacobs? I would do this. I would do it.
Wait, you're getting Jacobs in a 25.
I would take the first. I think the power of the first, especially, I mean, if it's just a dead league where you already know, hey, nobody values picks, maybe you go the other way. But a lot of our leagues, man, if you can stack firsts, if you're patient and you know how to roster construct, what you can do with having like 3 firsts in a league is huge. Like if you have like 3 firsts, which sometimes you have to pay like this kind of tax to get an extra first, if you can stack like 3 firsts, that's what allows you to make the big move later in the year. If you want to do it.
Here's the thing. I'm going to work under the assumption that 25 first is mine and it's going to be low. So at the end of the day, I'm giving up Jacobs and the 110 in the 25 draft. It's not as deep as the 24 draft for a chain and a 25 second. And I'm getting it from a team that I believe is probably mid. I'll go a chain. I've said this before. Chain's kind of getting an exemption from my hatred of running backs only because he's such a needle mover that I'm willing to take the risk on him, and knowingly, or I should say with the knowledge that he's not going to play all 17 games.
Yep, I can't argue with that, but you know how I am. I'm always trying to tier off a running back value. And I'll just say this, there's going to be a lot of more running back signings. There's a couple more we're going to talk about on this show. Then there's some other smaller ones, but more so there's going to be a lot of impacts in terms of other running backs that are affected by these signings and affected by the draft. I'm going to harken back to everything I talk about with roster construction. People ask all the time, oh man, this running back's now dead because this team signed one, or wheels up for this running back because they haven't signed anybody yet.
Yeah.
It all comes down to roster constructing, being able to put these guys in buckets. And the reality is at running back, you have the elite guys, the guys where you literally have a realistic range of outcomes. They're 21, 22 points per game or more. That's like 4 or 5 players. Nobody else. You can sell me how good Saquon is and how good Travis Etienne is and even how good Achane is or Jonathan Taylor. They're not hitting that number. They're just not. You know, I'm probably very strongly betting that they're not going to. But then after that, it's all about your construction. Like, I don't want to hold too much value outside of those guys. So that's the conversation we're having with Saquon and Jacobs and Achane. Like, I don't need 3 of those guys. Especially if it's a deeper league, a more active league, I'm fine just roster constructing the running back position to have enough upside built in, enough production built in. But man, I never want to be overloaded. And I'm going to play that way in every league you're playing with me in. You're going to look at my running back room, and rarely is it going to be overloaded. If I have too many running backs and it's July, I'm looking to ship one off. Even if I have to go to the range where I ship one off that I don't want to move, I ship that one off because I can move them. And I'll slide the non-sexy name, the James Conner, the Najee Harris. I'll slide them into one of the roles because no one will give me anything for those guys.
Okay, so I like this question. I have Tajae Spears and Brian Robinson. Now what do I do? Robinson.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to address Brian Robinson, I mean, let's get to Tajae Spears and let's get to Spears and Robinson in a second. But we can hit both of those at the same time. Tony Pollard signing with the Titans. And Austin Ekeler signing with the Commanders. So any thoughts on any of them? I'll give my quick thoughts, and then I'll just give you the floor. Doesn't impact Tajae Spears. It impacts Brian Robinson a little bit, but that's it. All of these guys, including Tony Pollard, Austin Ekeler, Tajae Spears, and Brian Robinson, were all just roster construction, efficiency bets, all in the same bucket. I like all of them. I don't overvalue any of the 4 of them. I want to roster construct, especially a guy like Tajae Spears, in a way where I'm playing him every week. Period. You don't want 3 of these guys on one team. Shane, who do I start this week? Jaylen Warren, Tajae Spears, or James Cook? Pick one. Pick which one's going to get 9 catches, Shane. Pick which one's going to have the touchdown, Shane. Tell me.
Move them. No
which
idea.
They're all good.
No idea.
They're all good. So when people ask questions, who do you prefer? You know what I prefer? A mix of all of them. Give me a little bit of this, a little bit of that. What I don't want is all 3 of them on one team. So this Tony Pollard, man, he just nuked Tajae Spears. No, probably not. You probably didn't want Tajae Spears getting more than 15 opportunities a game, ever. And now, Ekeler and Robinson, maybe that's a little bit different. But what are your thoughts on these guys, both of them? Tajae, Pollard, Ekeler, Robinson. Go wherever you want to go. Floor is yours.
Go buy me some Brian Robinson if this lowers his value even a little bit. What did we see from Austin Ekeler that makes you think he's going to be any good this year? Like, there's absolutely nothing that I've seen last year.
Top 20% in efficiency. He can still catch the ball. He can still catch the ball.
That's fine. So there you go. You're the reason I'm going to buy Brian Robinson. Then I'm going to be able to get him for a third. So I'm buying Brian Robinson. But in general, if I can get any of these guys on a dip, like, all right, go buy Tajae Spears now. Now's when I want to add him. Like, if I can get Tajae Spears for a third, would it cost me a second 2 days ago? Let me add him to my roster now.
I bought Spears today for the 212 and the 308.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's a start 11, or no, it's a start 12. So I think the other person is like, I'll take a second and I'm getting a free third in a deeper league. Mm-hmm. I can see why they would do it, but I'm okay doing that in a league where you're up against a roster crunch. And most of my teams have way too many thirds, way too many fourths. Like, I'm okay making that type of deal. How would you rank these guys right now, assuming you only can have one? Ekeler, Robinson, Spears, Pollard. How would you rank them? No cost contingent. You just pick one through 4. How would you rank them?
Brian Robinson.
Ooh, okay. Robinson, RB1. I think most people would rank Robinson like RB3 or 4 in that group.
No, most people are. Let's see. Brian Robinson. I don't know if it's
really struggling with these other 3.
I think it's Spears, then Pollard, then Ekeler. Well, Eckler's definitely last for me. I'll just put that out there. He's definitely last for me.
Okay, so Eckler's 4th. Spears and Pollard are split. So we know where Shane is at on Ekeler and Robinson. That's a much clearer, more convicted take for him than it would be for everybody else. But let's talk Spears and Pollard then. If you have them both on a team, Shane, what are their roles going to look like? Is it just going to be they're kind of similar and they're going to do like the same thing, just they're going to go back and forth, one drive here, one drive there? Or let me ask you this. Do the Titans view Pollard as he's the early down hammer like he played in Dallas last year, which is probably not best for him. But how do you think these guys are going to be deployed? Do you think it's just a pure one drive in the other? What's it going to look like?
Jesus. I think Pollard's usage is going to look more similar to it did 2 years ago than it did last year. Okay. So I expect Spears to still be heavily involved. If I remember correctly, Spears outsnapped Derrick Henry quite a few times last year. I'd expect that work share to be pretty even because they are both, Spears especially is an explosive dude. Pollard definitely did look a lot better in the second half last year, but everyone had anchor bias based off the beginning of the year when he couldn't score a touchdown to save his life. But he was much better in the second half of the year. He went on a little streak where he had a good run with touchdowns. I don't know. I don't know enough that I'd be convicted enough or have enough conviction to pay what anyone wants for Pollard right now. That's why I'm going Spears, because I think I could get him for a third or so. And I don't think I could do that. Okay, a late second.
I think both are probably firmly in the second round range.
Okay.
I guess my second question would be, would you be comfortable, let's say it's a start 11, just rolling out Spears and Pollard, and those were your top 2 running backs? And you eat every catch, every touchdown, every point they score. Are they enough to kind of carry you on a backfield where those are the only, and I think it wouldn't be like you went out and paid for those 2, but you already had those 2. Would you be comfortable just being like, this is my backfield? And I know on a weekly basis combined, they're going to score 28 points per game-ish. 113, 115, 114, 114, 112, 116, 10, 18. Like, would you be comfortable just kind of riding them both together?
So as you're talking about this, right, I'm thinking in my head, I don't know that I like the Titans offense enough to do that, right? But then I remembered some of my backfields last year in leagues where it was Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, and I just started them both, and it worked out fine enough. So again, because I know that people hate that we keep coming back to this sometimes, right? But my roster's constructed in a certain way. I'm probably like both of those guys are really good starting options for me. And if it just so happens on some of my teams, I have both of them, I'm not going to play that game if I'm going to guess that this is the week Pollard's going to be the guy and next week's the week that Spears is going to be the guy. I'm not smart enough to parse that out. So I'll just start them both. And like you said, I'll eat all the backfield work. And if they happen to combine for 40 points one week, awesome. If one scores 30 and the other 5, that's awesome too.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. More on those guys to come. I did just see Noah Fant re-signed with the Seahawks, 2-year, $21 million. So
didn't they sign Will Dissly earlier?
No, he went to the Chargers. But amazingly, apparently the Seahawks had 3 elite tight ends. No one really knew about it though, because they all got pretty big deals. Colby Parkinson went to the Rams. Will Dissly went to the Chargers. So we're not going to talk about those here, but I want to talk about a couple more before we end. We're going to close out about 8:05, and then I'm going live on DD feed with Ray. We're going to talk more free agency stuff. But Devin Singletary and DeAndre Swift. We'll start with Singletary. I know you have thoughts on this. You've always been a Singletary fan. He got a decent deal, 3 for 16.5, 5.5 guaranteed, I believe. Or no, the guarantees haven't come out on Singletaries that I've seen. But decent deal with the Giants. The problem is, Chain, the Giants could be bad. But do you like Singletary for going back to Dayball? And reports are they were in on Swift, but they were not in on Barkley. So like they were not looking to pay a running back more than what they're paying. So I don't know if they probably draft somebody, but like you look at their depth chart, it's like Deshaun Corbin and it's Eric Gray and Deion Jackson. So I mean, it's just all just roster fodder. Like, is this wheels up for Singletary? How you feeling? You got a lot of Singletary shares.
Singletary's ceiling is kind of what we've seen already. I don't think this increases it. I think he'll obviously have more opportunities every week on a more consistent basis. It's just going to be, what does Devin Singletary usually do at the second half of most seasons? He's going to have the opportunity to do it all season. I don't know that he's really, and I know he had a ton of work in college. That was a long time ago. I don't know he's a guy that I want having 250 to 270 opportunities. So I think they will work in some Eric Gray and Deion Jackson. And for their own sake, I hope they add a running back in the draft. But no, I like Singletary. Problem is you can't get him cheap anymore. I don't think he's going to just be a throw-in because he just got starting running back money, even if it's comparatively less than what. Did he get more than Pollard? No, he didn't. It's comparatively less than what some of the other running backs, and he only got $5.5 million guaranteed. He got like what Monty got last year, and what like a little bit above what Jamal Williams got last year. Like not quite the full workload starter type deal, but a tier below that. Would you sell for any second, knowing you can replace a guy like him easily? Yes. And I love Singletary, but he's gone.
Would you find a way to tier down off of him? You think you could do that? Could you tier down off of him for a third and another running back? That's just a filler, like a filler. Like, would you? Okay, here's one, because we'll talk about a guy that signed in his backfield. Would you take Khalil Herbert in a third or Singletary? Knowing that kind of the right situation, Khalil Herbert and him could be the same thing.
I mean, I should take Khalil Herbert in a third. Because, like you said, Khalil Herbert is literally one DeAndre Swift injury away from having the opportunity that Devin Singletary had last year. And I know Swift was healthy last year for the Eagles, but they also limited his touches in the second half of the year for whatever reason. I don't know why it was. I think it's probably because they thought he would break down if they didn't. So I'll take Khalil Herbert in the third. It's a smart move.
I think that's one of these takeaways from this free agency is that these guys signing good spots where they're clearly the starter. The move is still understanding roster construction, like Nathan said right here, Herbert in a third easily. And that's hard for people to stomach when they have Devin Singletary and they see he got this contract and he's probably going to be a starter. Man, I wish I could get more than a third and a running back body. They're going to view Herbert as a guy that got killed. He's dead, right? Dead. Will never get a touch. He won't get one touch, Shane. versus,
Yeah.
man, Singletary's a starter. And the reality is we play a week-to-week game where running back is extremely volatile. Guys go in, guys go out, guys get hurt, roles change. Process says you take the profit. As long as you kind of have enough bodies to get by, you can get by with it. So good point there. DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift signed with the Bears. Real quick, is there any hope for Roschon Johnson, Shane? Or does this speak volumes?
I'd say it speaks volumes, but he's still a guy. He's at any running back on a 53, and we know there's going to be attrition throughout the season. So why wouldn't he be a guy that is now behind DeAndre Swift, who has a pretty significant injury history, Khalil Herbert, who had some significant injuries last year? He's still a guy that I want on my roster, and I can get him fairly cheap, so I like him even better.
What's the crowd think on Swift? Is he a guy people are excited for? I mean, he was RB17 before this. As much as people liked him in the past, I still don't know if people thought he would get this contract. He was one of the first players to sign. He got decent money. He got the second most guaranteed money, and he got $8 million a year. So he's probably there for 2 years. And the Bears could have had it. Bears had the cap space to get anybody, and they went after him. So is he a guy that you can get a first for? I think an auto sell for a first, any first.
Oh, it's not even a question. Not even a question.
That's not a Swift thing. That's a any running back that's in this range. That's James Cook.
Yeah.
That's Rashad White. Javonte Williams. That's any of these guys. Ramondre. It's any of these guys that get to that range where you can get a first and they're not elite. You get out, right?
And that's funny because that's how I spent part of my Saturday, was just sending out Rashad White offers for any 25 first, and then I moved to any 26 first, just randoms.
Did you get any done?
No. So a lot still sitting out there, which is a little annoying. If you're playing Dynasty, respond to the trade offer or go play redraft and do something else. But now I'll try that with Swift in the one league I think I have him in. I might have him in 2.
All right, we're going to hit a couple more, then we're going to get to 2 hammers, and then we're going to end the stream. So the only relevant receiver, I think, that is really kind of signed that people are talking about is Gabe Davis with the Jags, 3-year, $50 million, $39 million guaranteed, up to 50 in incentives. I'll give my take. I think this is a good landing spot for Gabe Davis, Shane. I think his aggregate numbers are going to be very similar to what they were in Buffalo. I said it in the Discord. If you're not in the Discord, jump in there. I give my reactions to almost all of these signings, like what I'm actually doing in leagues, like the deals I'm trying to send out. And a lot of times do you really want to hear 8 minutes on Antonio Gibson or Gabe Davis? You know what? The patrons do. But I said I'm basically looking to get my Gabe Davis exposure. I don't want 0, but I want it with Trevor Lawrence. Start 11, start 12. Just put him on those teams. He's my last starter. Period. I'll live the fact that he's going to get probably wide receiver 35 to 55 numbers on the season. I'll just embrace the variance, but I want him on those teams specifically, and that is it. Any thoughts on Gabe Davis, or can we move on?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head with Gabe Davis. I am interested to see what happens with Calvin Ridley now. Did he sign with anyone while we've been on the air?
He is not signed with anybody as we are on the air, so I think he's probably bag chasing.
Last I heard, again, believe what you want on Twitter, because, again, I was convinced for 2 hours that Xavier McKinney was an Eagle, and I was very excited. Believe what you want, but what I saw on Twitter is that the Jags weren't out on Calvin Ridley necessarily. Correct. Just because they brought Gabe Davis there. You bring Calvin Ridley back. That I like that for Trevor Lawrence, who I think can move all the way up from like a QB 12 to like a QB 10 scoring-wise.
And I believe the way it works with Calvin Ridley, though, is he cannot sign with the Jaguars until after free agency starts. And it hasn't started yet. So if he's negotiating with other teams, like they can't it's not a re-sign. If you notice, some of these re-signings that are happening or being announced now, they actually can happen. Like Noah Fant re-signing with the Seahawks. Calvin Ridley cannot re-sign with the Jags, or they have to give up their second. He can sign with the Jags after free agency, though, and they only have to give up a third. Big difference. I don't think they want to give up a second and pay him $25 million a year. No. But it's possible that they find a way to do so. And then I would assume they would cut Zay Jones. But anyway, a couple more, then we'll hit this hammer. Any thoughts on Antonio Gibson? Any thoughts on Gus Edwards? And then the one we do have to talk about is Gardiner Minshew signing with the Raiders. He got pretty good money, Shane. $12.5 million a year. Yeah. 2 year, $25 million. That's not like definite starter money, but that is not, hey, we're going to go trade for Justin Fields. You know what I mean? Like that is, we expect you to start if we need you to. We probably expect you to be a bridge QB for a year at minimum. And I think it's good for the weapons there. But any thoughts on Minshew, Antonio Gibson, or Gus Edwards? And then we'll leave it at those three.
Gibson, I mean, you hit it on now on the head again in the Discord, the chat that you left in there. 8 to 10 touches a week. I don't think it particularly hurts.
7.7 opportunities a game last year, career low for Gibson. So I think the league views him as a niche player, and he did not even get the contract that like Devin Singletary or Gus Edwards got. He got lower than that. That tells me he's a very specific role, but continue.
Super specific. Like he's going to be a pass catcher that maybe 30 receptions, 35 receptions, something like that. The Gardiner Minshew signing, it almost for me, it feels like, all right, this is the guy that's going to coach up or mentor whoever they move up in the draft for and get a quarterback. I feel less secure about them getting Justin Fields, or I think that's not a real option at this point. I think they're more likely to get ahead because you just don't bring in a Gardiner Minshew to back up someone like Justin Fields if he's in the works. You just don't. Like he's he's a mentor quarterback. That's the type of dude he is.
And they still have O'Connell. I tweeted as soon as I saw that contract, they're not in on Fields. Right. That was all smoke. You know what I mean? They were never in on Fields if they were truly negotiating with Minshew at this level. Like there's just no reason to bring him in and have O'Connell and be picking where they are to trade anything of value for Fields. So we'll talk Fields at a later time. Ray and I are going to really hit on Fields when we get over on DD. And there's so much that goes into it. We can't squeeze it in the next minute or two.
Oh, yeah. And I purposely avoided any talking about Fields today because I have Fields out, but I'm not feeling great for him. No.
All right. Last question. Is Gus Edwards a hammer, Shane? Like literally, is he a hammer? Like he's a hammer player, right?
No. He's
not a hammer?
I don't care. He's with the Chargers. Harbaugh's going to run the ball 367 times
He's with
a game.
Greg Roman.
Yes. Who he's got history with. He does.
Right? Of course.
Yeah.
He originated as a hammer with the Ravens, and now he's right back at home with a team that their other running backs are Isaiah Spiller and the other guy, his name's slipping my mind right now. Can't remember the other guy that the Chargers have, the UDFA from last year that I picked up a ton of.
I want no parts of Gus Edwards. This is a back.
You want Gus Edwards?
All right, I'll take some.
It's not Josh Kelly. Josh Kelly's a free agent, which he probably will not be signed. Elijah Dotson, that's it. Appreciate you, Anthony in the chat. Elijah Dotson and Isaiah Spiller.
I'll take a very little bit of Gus Edwards, but I am of the mind that San Diego, I'll call them San Diego, the Chargers are going to add a running back. I could be 1,000% wrong, but I don't think you go into the season with Gus Edwards and a bunch of dudes that no one could name as your running back core.
Nope.
I just can't. And if you do, then that means Justin Herbert's throwing the ball 45 times a game, which I don't think is Harbaugh's bag.
Nope. All right, we're going to hit a hammer, and then we're going to close this out. Want to knock two of these out, Shane. So we're going to go right to Mike's question. Mike gave us 3 hammers.
Nice.
12 teams, start 10, tiered PPR, first down bonuses, 1.75 tight end premium. So he said tiered PPR, but then he changed it, first down bonuses and 1.75. Lamar, QB2, yikes. Swift, Mostert, Zeke, Zay Flowers, DK Metcalf, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, Nico Collins, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Lockett. So we have a senior citizens quad there with Lockett, Hopkins, Keenan Allen, and Mike Evans. And then Njoku, McBride, 102, 4, and the 201. So we have 3 top 13 picks here. He says, sold his 25 first to win the ship, now going for an empire pot. The 101 manager has his 25 first. Reached out about a possible trade, the 101 for both the 102 and the 104. He has Deshaun Watson. So I'm thinking 101, 108, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And he gives up the 102, the 104, Zay Flowers, Njoku, the 212 in 2 seconds. So it's an Empire League. It's a start 10. Basically, he wants to know with that roster that he has right here. There you go. With Justin Fields as his QB2, and his receivers are Zay Flowers, DK. I mean, you see the receivers in there. It's okay.
He's trying to add Amon-Ra, so he has a legitimate
he's trying to add
wide receiver.
Well, yeah, he's trying to address multiple needs. I don't even know what he's going to do with the 101, but I'm guessing it's probably a QB if he's adding Amon-Ra.
Yeah.
So here it is. 101, 108 in Amon-Ra, and he gives up the 102, the 104, Zay Flowers, Njoku 212, and the seconds. I'm okay giving up Njoku in the seconds in that deal because it's an Empire pot, especially because he has McBride. But the big part of it is really the 3 for 3 at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it is. I'm trying to do the math in my head, right? Is the moving from moving back.
Go 101 to 102 for all the other shit.
Yeah, well,
Njoku 212 in the seconds.
That's fine. And then it's really the difference is the 104 and Amon-Ra. Is that worth, or excuse me,
nope.
The
104 and Zay
moving
for
back
Amon-Ra and the 108.
Moving back to 108. And I will say, yes, I believe it is. And then on top of that, I will say, try to sell Justin Fields for any first that you can, 112, 113, 116 next year, the year after that. Because, we talked about that. But no, I'd make that deal. Because, again, moving back from the 104 to the 108, when I'm getting Amon-Ra as the reason why, for lack of a better term, I'm on board with that. Definitely, I would make that deal.
You know what I would like to do? Try to get Deshaun Watson for Justin Fields.
Deshaun Watson for I got to be honest with you. Yes,
in that deal, throw him in. He has Watson. Yeah. You have Fields. You would take Watson over Fields, right?
Try it.
Easy.
I would take Watson over Fields. I would take Baker Mayfield over Fields. Obviously, Kirk Cousins.
You would check to see if the QB you're getting has a pulse. You would take him over Justin Fields. All right.
That's where we're at.
We're going to do one more. This is a 3 hammers from Ginger Paradise. Thank you for the hammers. 12-team Superflex PPR, half-point tight end premium, start 10. It's nice having these formulated in a certain way, right? Like we're starting to get the template.
Roman.
It's very easy. Yes.
Shout out to Roman if he's watching.
Yes. So he's got Kyler, Herbert, Bryce Hall, Jalen Warren. I mean, can you talk about a sexier lineup roster construction right there with 2 elite QBs or semi-elite QBs? And then Bryce Hall with Jalen Warren as the RB2. I mean, that just gets me right there because that's exactly how I would play it. Then he's got Cans, of course. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Tank Dell, Cans. So we don't have enough receivers here, even in a start 10. But we have Hawkinson, McBride, and Laporta in a half-point tight end premium. So we got a lot of equity here at tight end. Shit ton of picks, though, Shane. The 2, the 4, the 6, the 7, the 8, the 9, the 12. Should have listed the ones you don't have, actually. So 7 firsts with the 204, 208, 209. So we have 10 picks in the top 21 along with the 307. And then you notice that last piece, Shane? Activity low. Meaning you're not going to probably be able to move all those picks probably for what you want. Any advice how to turn this to a contender for next year? Feels like he's only a couple moves away. Activity low. Remember that? It's like your fuel gauge low.
Yeah.
You're not going to get very far. So what do you do here?
I mean, the activity's low, so I can't tell you to trade. All I can really tell you to do is make the 102, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 12 then. I mean, if your league is going to dictate on the moves you can make, if people aren't going to trade with you, I could tell you to do anything in the world, but I'll tell you to do sure. Can you add the 112 to Chris Olave and go get Amon-Ra St. Brown? Try that, sure. But it sounds like you said, that your league is very inactive. You're just going to have to make the picks. And what's funny is you're going to have a lot of high-end assets that are just kind of bench warmers until everyone comes around. So you're like your points, whatever league GM tool looks at your team, it's going to be like, wow, this team is stacked, so many points, even if your starting lineup isn't really there. But, look, Olave, Dell, and Garrett Wilson is not a bad trio at wide receiver, and everything else is good. If people won't trade with you, though, just keep adding. That's all you can do.
It kind of feels like if you're forced, you just pick, receiver, tight end.
Right.
Like you just kind of go for the players that fit your team, like we would typically be like, all right, I want to pick here, don't want to pick here, see if I can get a leverage deal here, see if I can tier up here. But it sounds like he may not be able to do all of those. The only thing I would say is I'm actually okay if your league is willing to make picks. I'm willing to, re-roll a couple of those picks just for potential higher picks next year, knowing that I'm going to have to make the picks next year too, right? If I can turn the 109 into a future first and it's the 103 and I know I have to make the pick, I'd rather pick in the higher end ranges and wait a year, especially when you're going to have, I don't know what his roster size is here, but if he makes all those picks, he's got to be up against the limit. You know what I mean? Because he's adding 11 players plus whatever's on waivers and whatnot. And I don't know what his roster limit is, but it sounds like he's already pretty close to it and he's got to make 11 picks. So,
yeah. And that's why I said, like, his bench is going to be the strongest bench that you probably have ever seen in your life. But that's fine until people come around and they want to make moves with you. I'm still obviously going to be aggressive and send out multiple offers to multiple people.
Yes, sir. Well, Shane, this was a good Manic and Chill live. We could literally go for another hour. I got to jump on the Destination Chill stream with Ray. So everybody go check that out. If you're in here, I mean, we have over 3,300 people in here watching live right now. So jump over there, Destination Devi, YouTube. We will be back with our stream tomorrow night. There's going to be a lot more hammers we're going to be answering here at the end of the week, just because tomorrow's with JJ Zachariason. It's probably not just going to be a trade fest. We're going to want to talk some free agency reactions, some strategy. Like, he is one of the best in the space at game theory and strategy and thinking about things through all lenses. So not that we won't cover some trades, but it'll kind of be a different type of stream tomorrow, but I'm looking forward to it. Shane, any final thoughts? Otherwise, we will sign off and see everybody tomorrow night.
No, everything you said. Can't wait to get to talk to JJ tomorrow, and I hope we've got some really good talk for him.
Cool. Good deal. Well, appreciate everybody that tuned in, and we'll be back tomorrow, 8:30 Eastern. Thank you.